My feelings toward recent events has been building, and rather than go out there on the street corner with a sandwich board and an upbeat attitude, I decided to draw out the poison by indulging in topical comedy, which I usually try to avoid on account of the fact it's already ripened on the vine when presented and quickly rots into irrelevance, which is really fucking annoying when I include good jokes that I could have saved for something that I thought might have a longer shelf life. Subterfuge that, right in front of your face. Oh well, it's been a bit shit so far, but he said there's good jokes in it, so I'll stick around for that. Alas to inform, I am the great deceiver of old, and while there are jokes I would have preferred to use elsewhere, that much is true, they're not good jokes. Am I being self-deprecating? Am I being supremely ironic? Only my stylist, Dustbin Dave, knows for sure. It's going to be long, blah blah, your mum. Let's crack on, let's just get through it.
Hi, I'm the Quotes comedian, and if you're one of those people who watches one thing while also doing something else that requires your focus, then I have to say that you're not going to get the best experience out of me because I require your full attention. And that's not the only bad news. I've got homework for you as well. Now come closer, because there's more. And for those who might not know how to enjoy the comedy, I'm just going to step out of character for a moment. And you can tell because I said I'm just going to step out of character for a moment, which I did. Far be it from me to tell you how to enjoy the comedy, but there is an expectation from the creator that what it is right is you laugh at the man who thinks he's being funny but isn't, and that is what's funny. I say laugh, but what I mean is not vomit. Harsh, aren't I, on myself? And if I believed a word of it, I'd do exactly the same thing because I'm a belligerent twat, and I'm fine with that. Before moving on to the main thrust of this routine, I idly wonder if the second screeners fully appreciated the I'm stepping out of character joke, or literally anything I've said about the importance of keeping it threaded to fully enjoy the considered and nuanced bullshit I'm throwing your way. I mean, here I am hooting and hollering about second screen use and hissing and howling about Hollywood. Not yet, but I'm getting to it, Hollywood. Hooting and hollering about second screen use when I'm writing this while watching something on another screen like a wanker, not like a wanker. Keystrokes, folks, clickety clack, not the pleasurable kind of strokes. I haven't got an onomatopoeia for that one. Now, if you've watched the last few videos, you'll know I've been keeping things light by talking about the meaninglessness of existence, the inevitable and fast approaching extinction of all life on Earth, and the London Underground railway system. But it can't all be party hats and streamers, dear viewer, and it's time to contemplate the truly dark side of human nature. Hollywood and its relationship with so-called Israel. I call it so-called because while it obviously exists and functions as a state, I do not recognize its legitimacy. But then I don't really recognize the legitimacy of any state, but I especially don't recognize so-called Israel as one. After all, they'll tell you themselves that they're exceptional. I'll say, I've seen the footage. The IDF, the army of so-called Israel, the IDF defending a bunch of Jewish supremacist ghouls by murdering babies and raping hostages on television, waltzing down the Gaza Strip with the machinery of terror, drones, tanks, the soldiers' heavily armed, brainwashed homicide machines that resemble the Terminator, as played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, a person evidently not important enough to warrant a suggestion from my spell checker, but who felt it was the right thing to do to donate funds directly to the IDF. Well, he's Austrian. Of course he'd be racist. Obviously I won't be watching any Schwarzenegger films in the future, but I reserve the right to listen to the Predator soundtrack, which, let's face it, is really the only reason that movie is good anyway. What's that? Sour grapes? Did I hear the peanut gallery mutter sour grapes? Well, yeah, a little bit, because it's not just Arnie, is it? No. I won't be watching any Robert De Niro films, not even Angel Heart, which is the only one with him in worth watching. But not anymore. You bear the mark of Zion, sir. You are forfeit. Sylvester Stallone with his inspirational story of triumph over the odds with his journey to getting Rocky made. Turns out he's just tickety-boo with the IDF. Well, I suppose I don't have to see Demolition Man ever again, or anything with him in. Jamie Lee Curtis, Zionist. In fact, it'd probably be quicker to just release a list of people who stand against the atrocities so-called Israel is committing. I modulated the wording some because there are some people who believe they can be Zionist and maintain that so-called Israel's actions are wrong, but that fundamentally its right to exist is not a stain upon humankind as a supremacist Jewish ethno-state, or, as I like to call them, Zionist cunts. Bernie Sanders is an example of this. Zionists should be murdered in order to protect humanity from their filth. Faced with the unrelenting horror of what they have done and are doing to the Palestinian people, my only response is kill them with fire, like it would be upon discovering an unexpected nest of scuttling things under a flat rock. Just kidding, I wouldn't really burn a bug. Then there's Pop Pickers Radiohead, who also backs so-called Israel's genocide in a material way. Rainbows indeed. Won't put on their music again, tops anyway, so it's not like I needed much of an excuse to put them on my shit list. I mean, what can you say about Radiohead? Po-faced, pretentious bastards who specialise in performative misery. Musical innovators, that's my favourite. When did they do that then? I must have missed it. In the British Isles, that's what I'm calling my homeland from now on. Not the UK or Great This or the Commonwealth of, but in the British Isles there is a stand-up comedian named Jimmy Carr who by all accounts is spectacularly successful even after the taxes have been tabulated and can do any gig he wants. Guess what gig he wanted to do? That's right, he danced a jig for so-called Israel. The Zionist Jimmy Carr, who tells an awful lot of jokes about paedophiles. Know what I mean? I can put the final line wherever I want. I'm not one to argue about whether God could exist or not, couldn't, because it's moot, isn't it? What if you got one of those debaters that was really good with the old rhetoric? Nah, bugger that. I'll not be debated into a corner with the only option my acquiescence, because reason is a construct and I can take it or leave it as the universe determines for me. I view followers of the book, whatever book it might be. I'm guessing you've already made assumptions that I'm not talking in generalities. And to be fair, while the language that I've used in this has so far been inclusive, I do have Christianity in mind because culturally, I think of the Bible and its followers very much like I view fans of the Harry Potter books. While the creator and the source material is extremely problematic, by which I mean intentionally evil, the followers are generally alright. But there are those who insist on trying to convert you, aren't there? I'm not going to say Harry Potter fans are trying to convert me like what you expect, no. Harry Potter fans know better than to talk to me about Harry Potter because they don't want to see my well-rehearsed rant about Joke Rowling and her hatred of trans people, children, travelling folk and Jews in a live setting mere inches from their face. I think it's a well-worn trope, though. No point in entertaining the notion I might have had a novel thought. I think the well-worn trope of, well, if somehow you could absolutely prove God, Jehovah in this case, Jesus or the Jolly Spirit, my bad, the Jolly Spirit, if the trumpets sounded, the cups poured, and the winged hooves of mythic beasts brought forth God, and I did, in my mind, believe this to be God, then obviously I would stand in opposition to him, wouldn't I, on account of him being the abominable filth who is the root cause of all suffering. I'm sorry to say, folks, but when it comes to an Abrahamic God, Joke Rowling and her trans hates the kids, remember,
despises the Jews and mocks them relentlessly in her books that I've never read. And naturally, the travelling folk wouldn't darken her portcullis, would they? Because they know it'd be the boiling oil for them. And of course, her strange and unyielding, bizarre, really, trans hatred. Yep, she's the closest thing you'll get to the Abrahamic God on earth. And I think in the spirit of trying to recreate the mythos, much like Hollywood, remember I was talking about Hollywood, wasn't I? Then suddenly it seemed as though I just started midway in a completely different and unrelated thing. You were all confused and I was enjoying that. And much like Hollywood is in the process of making Harry Potter again, I think we should nail J.K. Rowling to a cross. You could imagine us, couldn't you, us anarchists, throwing dice for garment bragging rights while wedging a crown of thorns on her head. Only vinegar through a sponge for your thirst as you die, joke Rowling. Slowly, oh so slowly. But we do the spear of destiny, don't we, because we're merciful. Yeah, it doesn't quite work for me. Me being in the role of a Roman guard performing the sort of thing I rally against, because of course, when I say I think J.K. Rowling should be nailed to a cross, what I mean is get some planks and some nails, and obviously J.K. Rowling, and nail her to a makeshift cruciform. In your imagination. There is one argument for God, isn't there? The one that goes, if you can imagine it, then what you have imagined exists. Because even if it only exists in your imagination, it exists nonetheless. Therefore, God. Yeah, it's a nonsense strain of BS that I might have got a bit twisted because I can't be bothered to research it. But a serious interpretation could spell a magical morning of wood joinery and screaming for one joke Rowling, and I'd certainly be a mug to miss out on that. Zionist joke Rowling famously opposed the cultural boycott of so-called Israel, and I always find it endlessly amusing how so many Zionists are openly anti-Semitic, or, as in joke Rowling's case, dog-whistling the anti-Semitic sentiment so hard in her fiction that poor old canines are wishing for deafness or just outright death. Yes, J.K. Rowling hates your dog. What other possible conclusion could one draw? And poof, just like that, I've had my fill talking about that sack of snails, whips and puppy dog tails. I'm just like Ricky Gervais, talking about apologetics in a fatuous and derogatory way without nuance or understanding of the arguments to hand, but packaging it as if I did to people who might not know any better. But while I can't speak for Mr. Gervais, I'm a comedian, not songs of fucking praise, or its lesser-known rival, Credo. That last paragraph I just said, I can almost see the levels of recognition falling as it progresses. Oh, what, Ricky Gervais? The meter's in the yellow. Everybody broadly knows who that is. A successful British comedian who I don't particularly like, but I bear him no ill will. And then the meter drops when I mention songs of praise because that is peculiar to the British Isles. And while ubiquitous there, it's so banal that it's never talked about or brought up, but it's not going anymore, so the meter dropped and we're down to old British people. And then I mention Credo, and the meter no longer registers. Take that, Richard Herring. You're not the only one with really obscure, culturally contingent references. Oh, the meter flickered on the mere misapprehension that I mentioned. Take that. But I digress. I don't know what Ricky Gervais or Richard Herring or Take That think about so-called Israel, so I feel it's slightly unfair to include them in this. Not Ricky Gervais so much, who likes punching down on marginalised groups, whereas I like to punch monsters in the face. Monsters who might eat me. Ricky Gervais, of course, another comedian who makes an awful lot of jokes about paedophiles. I'm just saying. But where else can I take the mick? I'm allowed to say that I'm part Irish, depending on how I'm feeling on a given day. And I feel perhaps it would be a good way to wrap this up, wouldn't it? If I focused on the people who have spoken up against so-called Israel. Myself,
for example, in my humble role as public jester, because there I was in the 1920s London music halls, the smog quotes comedian I was then. I was all like, shut that door on the Balfour Declaration. Yeah, I'll finish this up on an upward lift and celebrate the people who've spoken up against so-called Israel. Me, for example, in my small role as village fool, because there I was in the 1970s in the working men's clubs, the second-hand smoke quotes comedian as I was back then. I was all like, my mother-in-law is very much like so-called Israel, and that she cackles with delighted glee at the sight of shrapnel eviscerated Palestinian babies as well. And she can't make hummus for shit. So what I'm going to do is end this routine on a positive note and give a shout out to those who stood up for Palestine. I, for example, back in the 1980s alternative comedy circuit, I was the alternative quotes commie all the way back then, and I was all like, I can't actually tell you what I was all like because nothing was written down. It was all improvised and not nearly as progressive and right on as you remember either, being populated as it was mainly by privileged middle-class twats with only nominal anti-establishment sentiments. Radiohead creeped into my mind just then. I know the past participle is crept, but I don't know what a participle is. I play by ear, because B, I won't follow the rules, and C, CA. Don't subscribe, dislike the video, and don't tell anybody about this. It's bad enough that you know about it. I don't need any more trouble, thanks. Good night.